Welcome everyone to the CMP webinar series. I'm Claire Elton, co-coordinator of CMP, along with Jacqueline Lucas, who's here as well today. I've got the privilege of welcoming Carrie Stiles. Carrie's the Senior Program Officer at FOS, but also the Miradi Project Manager. And as you know, this webinar focuses on some of the new work planning features that were recently released in Miradi Share. And there's a huge shout out and thank you to Northern Land Council in Australia and Bush Heritage Australia, whose generous support funded the development of these new features. So huge shout out to them. And then with that, Carrie, I'm going to hand over to you and I'm going to stop sharing. Go.
Great. Thank you, Claire, and good morning or whatever time of the day it is to everyone, wherever you are. Let me share my screen here. Make sure you can all see. All right. Are you all able to see Miradi slide deck?
We've got it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, excellent. Hold on, let me adjust this real quick here. Okay, now I can see you all. So yeah, super excited to be here for second version of the work planning demonstration. And I'm the Miradi project manager, as Claire said, but I also want to note that we do have another fabulous member of the Miradi development team on the call today, Sarah Estlander with FOS Europe, and also the Miradi UX designer. So you can thank her and her excellent skills for all the lovely UX work that she's been doing to make Miradi Share much more functional and fun to work with online. So Sarah will be not presenting, but is here to answer questions, help provide tips and additional information as we go. So do post questions in the chat, and my colleagues here at FOS and the Miradi team will help stop me if needed to speak. Yesterday we did take the full time, but there was also time for Q&A. So my preference is that this is a bit interactive, and as we're going along, please post your questions and we'll address them as they come up, rather than waiting till the end. So here we go. So let me go through here. So what we're going to talk about today, first of all, want to mention which projects have access to the new features at this point. So we'll cover that first because some of you may not be seeing them right now, but we'll talk about that. Then introduce you to the new landing page, the work plan hub, where you can set some basic project level content that you need to set in order to do detailed work planning. Then we'll go through how to develop work plan content. And I'm coming into this with the assumption that most of you know the basics of how Miradi works and how you add content. But just to make sure, I want to cover how you add content in results chains and then how you go into the new tools to manage detailed assignments and expenses. Show you how to get the data out, both to export it to Excel so you can work in other systems and also to access the same data in data views within the Miradi interface, which allows you to do more sorting and filtering and customizing. Then we'll circle back to what work planning data is still in Miradi Desktop, that if you want to do some more sophisticated work planning, you would still need to modify some content in Miradi Desktop, point you to the help resources that are available for you, and then talk about work planning phase 2, because we do have hopes of bringing all the Miradi work planning into Miradi Share in the not too distant future. So this is a pretty packed agenda, but as I said, let's mention again for anyone who just signed on, please do post questions as we're going along in the chat, and we will stop to answer them as we go, so no one gets left behind. So just wanted to emphasize again what Claire mentioned earlier. So some of you, hopefully all of you know this, but Miradi is entirely user supported. So we do charge a modest fee for use of the software. And that is what keeps our development team running and allows us to develop new features and provide excellent support. So in addition to that, organizations contribute funds toward Miradi development to help us develop new features. So we are always looking for partners to help us advance Miradi Share. And in this case, Northern Land Council and Bush Heritage both contributed significant funds, which covered much of the development of these new work planning features. So huge, huge thank you to those organizations. And they're continuing to pilot some really interesting tools, which we also hope to bring to you in the future. So if you want to see new features in Miradi, let us know if you want to send some funds our way, and we'll figure out how to get those features into the development pipeline. Oops. So we're going to cover that later. So let me hop over to the Miradi Share. Can I just confirm that you're seeing a Miradi project in Miradi Share and
Yes.
not the slide deck? Excellent. Okay. So where can you access these features? I just want to note right now, these new work planning features, which are primarily under this work planning section, which we'll go to next, they're in Miradi program spaces. So you have access to these right now, to these expanded work planning features if you are engage, if you have a team plan, or if you work on projects that are covered by a Miradi team subscription. So that means your projects would be in a program space. So you may have an organizational name that you see down the side. You won't see all of these. These are all the ones that I have access to. But you may see your organizational name at the side, and then there'll be projects over here on the right. Those projects will have access to the new features. If you're working in standalone projects, at this point, the standalone projects don't have access to these expanded features. So um, we are considering making them available in standalone projects, and we're looking forward to hearing from people who would like to see that. If you do want to play with these features after this demonstration, then and you don't have access at this point, let us know and we can give you access in a demonstration space for a period of time to play around with them and see if you like them and want to upgrade to a team subscription. So just want to make sure you know why you're not seeing those features if you're not seeing them in your project. So I'm in this demonstration project here, the Eastern Bay, which is in the Miradi Island Seascape Example Program. It's publicly available. And as I mentioned, I just want to, oh, actually, well, first, let's go to the new work planning features. So there is a work plan hub now under the work planning tab, the work planning section. And this work plan hub is here to orient you to the broad suite of work planning tools. The first thing we want to draw your attention to is the project timeframes that are here in a panel on the left. In order to do any detailed work planning in your Miradi project, you'll need to set the project dates. So this is the dates for the entire project. So this is an example of a project running from 2016 to 2030. So you'll need to set that project timeframe. And then you'll also need to set your fiscal year. The default is January through December. So if you don't change it, your fiscal year will be set to January to December. But many organizations use a July to June fiscal year, or if you're working on the US federal fiscal year, you would work on October to September. So you'll just need to choose for each project the fiscal year. And then you have the option to set work plan dates. Work plan dates are not required. You can leave these blank if you would like to. They could be the same as your project dates, or if you choose to, you could do a narrower work plan time frame. Some teams often find it useful to sort of narrow down the work plan time frame they're working on, rather than using the entire project time frame. But again, this is optional. You do not need to set these in order to do the detailed work planning, but they will shape the time frame for some report outputs and for some content that you'll see in desktop. So we're not going to talk more about the work plan dates here since they're optional, but you can see more about them in the Help Center if you read about Help Center work planning in the Help Center. So just to come back, you need to set your project dates and you need to set your fiscal year in order to use the detailed work planning tools. Now, what else you'll see in the hub here, we have some shortcuts to other types of information. We've gotten some feedback on this work plan hub that it could be more useful. So as you start using the hub, we're really keen to get your feedback on how to make this landing page most useful. And we welcome comments in the support center. So just submit a request and let us know what you'd like to see. We're always keen to get feedback. So in addition to the work plan hub, the other thing that you'll probably want to start with when you're doing work planning is setting up your team and partners. So under the team and partners section, these are all the people or groups that you will have access to assign to any activities or tasks or strategies in your work plan. So this is not your Miradi team. These people do not necessarily have access to the Miradi project, but they're both the individuals as well as the groups that you would be assigning to certain strategies, activities, and tasks. So once we get into the detailed work planning, you'll need to have a list to choose from. So yesterday in our demonstration, I already added myself. So note that you can edit any content here in the table if you want to, or you can add new individuals as a person, or you can add new groups here using this add feature. It works the same as all the other add features in Miradi Share. So again, I've just added myself as a team member, and I've added the Miradi software team as a group. So once you've set up your team and partners, then you'll have access to use them in your work planning. So in order to do detailed work planning, those are the two things I'd recommend you start with. Set up your team and set up your project timeframes and your fiscal year. So I'm going to come back to some basics in Miradi before we get into the detailed work planning, just so everyone knows how the detailed work planning tools relate to the basic steps that you take in building out your Miradi project. So right now I'm in a theory of change, and you can see I'm going to expand to full screen so that we have a little bit more space to work with. And just as a reminder, the actions in Miradi are represented by the strategies, which are these high-level yellow hexagons. So this is a strategy. And you'll note that when I clicked on this strategy, a few other rounded rectangles were highlighted. So these are activities, these two activities here, as well as an activity up on the top. And then we have a monitoring activity here, the survey boats. And I'll unclick so you can see the color difference. So these yellow rounded rectangles and the purple rounded rectangles are activities and monitoring activities that belong to this strategy or this high level action. You can add them to your results chain by clicking on this yellow axe bubble at the bottom. And then you can access your existing activities, or you can add new activities. And I'm going to add a new activity here just to use as an example for this exercise. I think that we need an activity related to raising awareness among tour companies, in addition to tourists. So I'm going to add an activity, raise an awareness with tour companies. I'm going to open the factor properties on the right, and I'm going to give it an ID. And I believe these are, let me see what the other IDs look like, R1-2. So I'm going to call this R1-5, and I'm going to save it. So now I have an activity with an ID and a name, and I'm going to drag it up here by this result. So in order to ensure tour groups are able to request gearing tours, we need not only to raise awareness with tourists, but we need also to raise awareness with the tour companies. So now I've added an activity that's directly tied to my theory of change. So in order to use the detailed work planning tools, you need to at least have a strategy, and then you can add all of the other activities and factors in the detailed work planning tools, but teams typically start by adding their activities here in the results chain. So I just wanted to show that. So there's a lot more that we could say about working in diagrams and adding content to your activities here, but that's for another session. So I'll let you either explore that on your own, or we could have a follow-up session on how to build out work planning content and diagrams. What we want to work on today is introducing you to the new work planning tools. So now that I know I have a strategy, at least one strategy, I actually have two in this results chain, I'm going to go back to our work planning tools, and I'll be able to build out detailed assignments and expenses for those strategies here. So if you have not yet worked with the new tools, you won't have any work plan views, and you'll have this really nice set of instructions here on how to use this tool, create a work plan view, and how they work. So I'll let you read through that on your own time, because I'm going to cover all that verbally. So work plan views are the way that you access the work planning data. And let me show you how to create them and then talk a little bit more about how they work. So I hopped over to the work plan view manager, and you may have noticed it brought me into the project admin space. So we were here on the hub where we have this blue bar, which is that means this content is accessible to anyone with view access to the project. When we hop over to the project admin section, this bar turns gold, and these tools are only available to editors or higher. So know that project viewers will not be able to create and edit work plan views, but the project editors and managers will. So we're in the work plan view section now. Again, you have a really nice set of instructions on how to create and use work plan views. And then you can access the Help Center article with a lot more detailed information, including some YouTube videos here by clicking on these blue links. So there's always support for you there. But we're going to go through the process of creating a single work plan view. So I'm going to add a work plan view. And for this one, I'm going to do a 5-year work plan forecast. So I'm giving it a name that helps my team understand basically what this work plan is about. You can also provide a lot more detail in the description field. I'm not going to write that here now. This is optional. So I'm creating a 5-year work plan forecast. That means for the next 5 years from 2025 to 2030. So I'm going to show all the work plan content for that 2025 to 2030 period. Now, typically, when you're doing work planning at that long time frame, you don't want to work at a detailed scale. You're not going to develop work plan content on a monthly or quarterly scale when you're looking over 5 years. So we've given you the option to choose what time level you want to work on. So I'm going to choose the fiscal year. So my work plan view is going to be segmented into yearly time buckets. When I get down to more detailed work planning, which we'll do next, then we'll do a quarterly or monthly work plan view. But for now, we're just going to work on a yearly time level over the period 2025 to 2030. I now also have the option to include actions from only my results chains, or I can include actions from situation models or both. Most people develop their work planning content for results chains only. So you may put some draft or candidate strategies in your situation models, but typically you don't develop your activities and your tasks and your assignments and expenses until you get to the point of developing a detailed results chain. So we think that results chains only is going to be the most typical selection here, but again, you can select a broader set of content from your project if you want to. Once you select the results chains, you can then go in and further narrow down the content. And teams often like to develop work planning content by results chain. So we've given you the option to select a single results chain if you want to. So what we're now building out is a 5-year work plan view at the yearly timescale for only the rat elimination results chain. You then have some default view selectors here. You don't need to play with these if you don't want to. These are optional, but you can select either to view content, when you default open the work plan view, it'll expand to have all of your content open. Or if you only want it to expand collapsed, so you only see the strategy rows and it produces a smaller table, you can do that. I'm going to just set the default to all rows. And I'm going to set the default to show me the assignments page first. You'll have the option to work in both pages and toggle back and forth. This just allows you to set whether you want to see assignments or expenses first. And then you also have the option to include any classification columns that you want to for your work planning data, your strategies, activities, and tasks, as well as your assignments and expenses. So the default classifications in Miradi Share are the CMP and IUCN action classification, so I am going to include this. If you work in a program that has a bunch more classifications that help you analyze and categorize your data, you may have more to select from here. So you'll be able to decide whether you want to include those in the table. So I've set all my attributes here for my work plan view. And I am now going to hit save, and you'll see that I now have access to the work plan view. While we're here, I'm going to set up one additional work plan view. I'm going to do an annual work plan view. for 2025. So this is just for a single year. And since it's a single year, I'm going to do a much more detailed work plan at the monthly scale. I'm going to leave this set to 2025. We're working on the current year work plan. I'm going to select the same results chain, the rat elimination chain, and I'm going to leave these default settings the same. I'm going to show all rows and assignments, and I'm also going to show the CMP conservation actions classification. So now I have two work plan views here, and I can click on them to open them and see my work plan data. So you'll note this just popped me out back to the work planning section to the assignments and expenses page. I'm going to expand this to full screen, and then I'm going to stop to say just a little bit about this work plan view, and then I'll see if there's any questions before we get into how you work in the table. So you can think of these work plan views as really windows into your work planning data. So your assignments, your expense, all your strategies, activities, and tasks, those are project data that are within your Miradi project. And you can set up these work plan views at these different time frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more years, and at different time scales, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. And you're setting those up really as a way to frame specific batches of your work plan data, really create a window into your work plan data that you can then edit and view. So the data is all existing in your project, but you're setting up these work plan viewers that allow you to work with it in a way that is manageable and useful for your team. So again, you can set up as many windows as you'd like. You toggle between them. You can see the two work plan views that we just set up here. So you can toggle between them in this viewer, and then you can work with your data. So I do see there's a chat. Oh, that was just Jacqueline saying thank you. Okay. So we've gone through setting up the work plan views. We've gone through how to create the basic strategies and activities and results chains, and we've set our project timeframes and our teams. So we've set up all the basics that we need in order to start working in a table like this. So I just want to see if there's any questions about what we've gone through so far before we start interacting with this data. Clear as mud? Okay. Again, chime in if you have questions. Thumbs up. Great. So what are we seeing in this work plan view or this window into our data? So you'll notice in the table on the left, we can see all of the strategies and activities and tasks that already exist in this results chain. So along the top of the work plan view, you'll see the name of the results chain or the full set of results chains or situation models that you're working with. So this is my RC1 rat elimination results chain. So it only includes strategies, activities, and tasks from this results chain. You can also see that this work plan view is by year, and you can see again the time frame, January 1st, 2025 through December 2030. So it's this 5-year time frame. And we set our default to show assignments first. If we want to work on expenses, we just click this tab and toggle over to the expenses. And if we want to come back to see any details about this work plan view, we can always click on this question mark. If you have editor access, you'll be able to edit any of these attributes here. If you don't have project editor access, you'll just be able to view this useful content. So now that we're in the work plan view, there's a few, let's walk through what these columns mean. These first 3 columns are the set of actions that are in your project, strategies, activities, and tasks. You can see the details in the comments for each of those here. Note that you can also edit any of this content, the details, the activities. So you have access to the basic information for all your strategies, activities, and tasks, which you can add here. You can edit, and that'll show up in these 2 columns here. Note that if you like to see a cleaner view of the work plan view, which I do, you can turn these columns off. So that compresses the details and the comments column. So if you don't need to use those and you just want to look at the names, you can turn those columns on and off. So moving to the right, the next column is the people or the assignments that you've assigned to your strategies, activities, and tasks. So you can see for this first strategy, we've assigned Elena Martin. For the next activity, we've also assigned Elena Martin, and for this R1-1 activity down below, we've assigned Adriana and Elena. Those assignments are rolled up to tell you at the activity level or at the strategy level, your first full set of assignments. And you can edit those assignments by clicking on, let's go down here to our new activity down below. You can add assignments by clicking on the three dots menu here, add assignment. I'm going to add myself to this new activity we created. And I'm also going to add, I'm not going to edit the activity. I'm also going to add the Miradi software team. So you can see I just added assignments here, Carrie Styles and Miradi software, so they now show up in these rows. And you may have also noticed when I was clicking that you can remove assignments. So here using the three dot menu, you can both edit the action information as well as add and remove assignments and add tasks if you need to. You can also delete activities. So you can do a lot of your work planning work right here in this table. So once you've added your assignments, then let's move over to the work unit data over here in the years column. So we set the time frame for this work plan view when we originally set up the work plan view. So you can see FY 2025 through FY 2030 is listed at the top. And what you're looking at in the columns here are the total work units for each year for each assignment. So I'll explain what the orange cells mean in just a moment, but ignore those colors for a moment. So what you're looking at is Elena Martin has 5 work units for the entire year for FY 25. Down here under this activity R1-1, Adriana Gonzalez has 20 work units for FY 2025 and 5 for FY 26. Elena Martin has 2 and 1. So a work unit is defined by your team. In most cases, we leave it undefined so that your team can develop the work unit that makes sense to you. Most teams note that a work unit equals a day. So for example, Adriana Gonzalez has 20 work units or 20 days for FY 2025. You can define that however you like. You could do work in hours if you like to, or weeks. But work units equal to days seems to be really common for project teams. So you can think of these as days, the number of days. They're rolled up from the individual cells here associated with an assignment. They're rolled up to the next level action. So this is an activity. So you can see that these 2 assignments have 17 hours for this activity. And then they're rolled up at the top to their parent strategy. So this strategy has 51 assigned work units for this entire year. And then down at the bottom, you can see the assignments across the entire year, which seems wrong. That should not be 49. It should be greater than 41, but we'll not quite sure why that's happening. So ignore that for now. We'll come back to that. It was working fine yesterday. So the work units in these cells can be edited directly by clicking on the edit pencil. So for example, for this raise awareness activity here, 1-3, I can come in and edit any of the cells that are white or light gray when I hover over them. So I'm going to, for example, reduce the work units for Anna Thomas for this year for FY 26. And I'm going to bump up Elena Martin's work units. So I just assigned Elena 5 units for 2026. I assigned Anna Thomas 10 units for 2026. And looks like the calculations are now correct here. 71 down below. So you'll see the numbers changed at the top when I change those work units. The strategy now is 26 work units for the period 2026. And that's the same total across the entire results chain. So it's very straightforward to edit work units. You can come in and click on any of the cells to edit content. Maybe I'll add 10 units here. The orange cells mean that there are work units assigned for that assignment, but they're on a different time scale than the current work plan view. So what this means for this 1-3 raise awareness with tourist activity down here is that Anna Thomas has 15 work units assigned for the period of the 2025 fiscal year, but they're at a different time frame than a year. So if I click on that cell, it'll tell me where those work units exist. And what you can see is that for 2025, someone has done some more detailed work planning on a monthly scale. So this assignment has 5 work units assigned for April, May, and June, and those roll up to 15 for the entire year. Now, I just hit the convert button, and I meant to not hit the convert button because I was going to explain what I did. But let me show you, let me run through that again. So Elena Martin here has 2 work units for the total year FY 2025. Let me click on Elena Martin. You can see that she has 1 work unit for April and 1 unit for May. So you can either leave that as rolled up total for the year, rolling up 2 monthly work unit values, or you can use the convert button here, which will convert the data for that assignment into the time scale that you're using in the current work plan view. So let me hit convert, and you'll see that that work unit value is now editable. So it's been converted to work units at the scale of a year, since this work plan viewer is working on the fiscal year. So now we have 2 Elena Martin units, and that is now editable now that it's using the same time scale as this work plan viewer. So typically what teams would do is they would develop a budget forecast or a work plan forecast at this higher time scale at a fiscal year level, and you develop a coarse-grained work plan for maybe the next 5 years, maybe the next 3 years, and you'd make assignments at the scale of the work unit, the yearly yearly time scale, and then you'd come in and do a much more detailed work plan view when you're getting into the detailed work planning for the current year or the next year. So I just opened up our annual work plan view for 2025. I'm going to collapse the details and comments columns so that they don't take up so much space. And you'll see the same assignments here, the same activities that we were just working in, since we're looking at the same results chain. But what you'll see is across the top, now you have the quarterly and monthly columns, which allow you to do detailed work plan for this entire year. And you'll see that indeed, there are work units assigned at the scale of a month for many of these assignments. The 2 assignments that we just converted back to yearly data in the last work plan view are now rolled up over here to show you that there's data that exists for this assignment at the yearly scale. So the 15 work units we were working with previously and the 10 here for Elena Martin. But since we're now doing detailed work planning for the next year, we're going to want to convert this to monthly units. So I'm going to click on the orange cells again. Again, it gives me the chance to convert the data. So it tells me I have 15 work units on a yearly level, and I'm going to convert that back to a monthly time scale. I'm going to do the same for Elena Martin. I'm going to take her 10 yearly work units and convert them to monthly. And what you'll see is that Miradi drops them in the first month for you. You can then come in and modify those how you want to. And I'm going to decide that Anna Thomas, her 15 work units are going to be spread across Q2. So I'm just going to go in and type 5. So that's where I'm going to put her 15 units. Well, not quite Q2. Let's get them back here. So there's Q2. So April, May, and June, she'll has 5 units, and Elena Martin is going to pick up the work in Q3. So we'll get rid of those 10. So now you can see we still have 15 work units for Anna Thomas over the course of the year, but now that's been distributed at a monthly time scale, and Elena has the 10 units at a monthly time scale. So I'll take questions in just a minute, but just to walk you through the other data that we have included in the work plan view that hopefully will be helpful. You can see the latest progress report for any of your activities, strategies, or tasks here. So you can see the status as well as the date and the details for that progress report. So this is often useful when work planning because you're looking at whether your action is progressing as expected, and you use that information to determine how you might want to allocate your resources over the next year. Then you can see also that we set by default that the CMP conservation actions classification would show up for any actions. So you can see that there's one assignment for, what is this? Policy to mandate rat barriers. I think that's probably under, is it under legal and policy frameworks? No, I don't know which one is selected here. Oops, I just unselected it. That's why. Let me come back. I can see legal and laws, regulations, and codes. There we go. So if you've classified any of your actions, you'll see those classifications here. And if you have any custom classifications for your program, they will also show up in separate columns. And then the final piece of information here is the funding source. So Miradi Desktop currently allows you to define and manage funding sources. If you have done that in Miradi Desktop, you'll be able to assign funding sources here. You won't be able to manage your funding sources in Miradi Share yet. That's coming in phase 2. But right now you can assign funding sources that you've set in Miradi Desktop here in your work planning table. So a couple last things. You can expand and collapse the columns by clicking on here. Is this here? No. Why am I not getting the expand and collapse columns option? Oh, it's here. That's why I need to switch over to this 3 bars. There we go. So I'm going to collapse all the rows. So now you can see that I'm just seeing the strategies. So if that's a little easier to work with, I can slowly expand my work planning content out to work on individual rows. So I'm going to expand all this so you can see what we've been doing and then take any questions. Thanks, Charles. Sarah.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for sharing this, Carrie. This is really exciting stuff. I have a question about whether there's anywhere you can assign or say what you've assigned as a work unit for others that might not know.
Yes, that's excellent. And that is one thing that we hope to bring online in phase 2. So there's a few features, and since you asked, I'll just go into the data that's still available in Miradi Desktop and you would need to manage there. So in Miradi Desktop, if you choose to use these things, you don't need to do this for work planning, but if you want to define what a work unit is, you would do that in Miradi Desktop. There's a field in Miradi Desktop in the work planning section to define what a work unit means. So you would say work unit in our Miradi project equals a day or an hour or a week or however you choose to define it. So you can set that in the project in Miradi Desktop. You can also set your currency in Miradi Desktop. So if you're calculating budgets based on this information, you can set your currency, Canadian dollar in your case, US dollar in my case. So you can set your currency in Miradi Desktop. You can also assign work unit rates in Miradi Desktop, which are of course needed to calculate budgets. So for example, for Elena Martin, maybe she's $100 a day or $500 a day. You would assign her work unit rate. Adriana, maybe $800 a day. So you can set the work unit rates for each individual resource, a team or a group, an individual or a group. You can set that in Miradi Desktop. That then allows you to calculate budgets, which we currently support in Miradi Desktop, and we support calculating budgets in report template exports from Miradi Share, but we don't yet have a way to calculate budgets here from assignments in Miradi Share. That's also part of phase 2. And then finally, the funding source list. You would manage your funding source list in Miradi Desktop at this point, but what we would encourage teams to do, and we're happy to support you with this, we will likely be moving to using classifications to manage funding sources. That gives you a lot more flexibility. If you develop your funding source list using a custom classification in your program, then you can choose to allow people to assign one class, one value, or multiple values, sort of multiple funding sources for an assignment, for example. So you would have full control over managing those. So just to come back to Sarah, your original question, you define the work unit currently in Desktop. And so you would check your project out in Desktop, you would define it there and load it back to Miradi Share so it is retained as part of your project. You define work unit rates in Desktop still, you define funding sources in Desktop still, and you would define your currency and your total budget in Desktop. But again, that's part of the suite of data elements that we want to bring into Miradi Share with our work planning phase 2. We fully expect those to be available and editable in Miradi Share hopefully in 2026.
That's great. Thanks. I guess follow up and only tangentially related to this topic. I noticed you're still using the terminology strategy and activity rather than action and activity. Is that something that's expected to change in Miradi soon to match 5.0?
That is an excellent question, and definitely related. So we've decided not to change the base language in Miradi Share at this point, since there's many users, thousands of users using Miradi Share, and we don't want to do a quick switch on them in the system. So what we've done is created a terminology pack. So if you want to use the new terminology, all you have to do is select Conservation Standards 5.0. So once I do this, I hit save. Then all of the language in your instance of Miradi Share will switch to CS 5.0, and you will start seeing those listed as actions instead of strategies. Your conservation targets will be visible as focal values. So for example, as I come down here, I should now see, well, I guess I can't see it here. Can I? Action. Yeah. So you'll notice that now when I hover over a strategy, it's called an action. And if I go here, I can edit the action details instead of strategy. So we wanted to give users the option to work with either CS 5.0 or stick with the old terminology if they wanted to.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's a great solution for the switch.
Excellent. And let me just also say that when you choose the terminology set, so what I'm doing is I'm clicking on the terminology set button up here in the upper right. When you choose that terminology set, it applies to your instance of Miradi Share only, and it'll apply across all of your projects until you change that setting. So it doesn't affect anyone else's view of the content. And you won't have to switch it every time you switch to a new project if you decide you want to use the new terminology. So your terminology setting will stay. Yes, export. Thank you. Yes, let's go to that. Yeah, we only have about 15 minutes left. Hold on one second. My computer's about to run out of batteries. Hold on. All right, plugged in the wrong power cord. Now we're good. Yes, coming back to the other ways that you can interact with this data. Great question. We planted you in the audience. Okay, so at the upper right, so again, I'm in the assignments and expenses table. At the upper right, you can export your work plan view. I'm going to go to full screen just so you can see all of this. And I'm going to go back to the 5-year work plan view because I want you to be able to see some of the features in the export. So the export to Excel includes all the data for your work plan view, and it also includes all of the grouping and structure and colors in your work plan view online. So I just opened this in Excel. Hopefully you can see the difference there, and you'll note that it includes all of the really useful grouping down the sides. You can collapse and expand the rows in the same way. And it includes the shading. So we're hoping that will be useful for you. So you can still see that, for example, this 5, you know that there's 5 annual work units, but it's at a monthly or quarterly timescale. So you can see that someone has done some more detailed work planning for this assignment. You see the roll-ups are the same. The aggregated or summed up, rolled up rows are also colored in gray, and you have all the detailed information over here. The only information you don't have is the hover text. So for example, for the progress report, you just see the status, but we don't include in the export the detailed information about that progress status. You can get that elsewhere in Miradi. You've got your totals across the bottom.
And Carrie, can you make changes in that Excel sheet and upload it back into Miradi with those changes?
No, you cannot. So once you export the data to Excel, any edits you make in the cells here would not be reflected in Miradi Share. There's no way to import those at this point back into Miradi Share. But that again is one of the things that we would like to work on in work planning phase 2 and a related piece of work. We do have plans, and they're just seeking funding to do this, to develop a write API. So what an API is a tool that allows you to bring data out of one software application into another. So we have a read-only API that currently allows you to pull your data out of Miradi and use it in other systems like Power BI or Airtable. What we want to develop is a write API, or a read-write API, which would allow you to edit data outside of Miradi Share and easily sync it back to Miradi Share. So we expect that would focus. The first write API would focus on progress reporting of all types, including actions, strategies, and activities reporting, as well as work plan data. So we are seeking funding to develop a write API that would allow you to do that editing outside of Miradi Share and sync it back with your project in Miradi Share. But we can't do that yet. How can the work plans be linked to Power BI? Using the API, which anyone who works in a program space has access to. We provide access to your API in a program space for anyone. You just point Power BI to your Miradi program and it accesses all of this data from your Miradi projects. Then you can build your own dashboards in Power BI. So we can help you get access if you'd like to, and it's available to anyone working in your program space. Let me show you one other thing. Okay, I wanted to show you one other way to interact with the work planning data, and then I want to quickly cover what we're hoping to do in work plan phase 2. So currently, because of the complexity of these sorts of grids or tables that calculate roll-up values for you, we haven't yet developed any really sophisticated ways to filter and sort the content in these tables. Because when you filter and sort content in these tables, you have to decide whether it affects your roll-up values. And different people have different ideas about whether or not filtering and sorting the rows here should affect the roll-up values. So we'll explore that in the future in phase 2. But if you wanted to see, for example, a work plan view that's filtered to show only the assignments for a single resource, you can currently do that in data views. We already support that. And it's view only. You won't be able to edit the data, but you will be able to create those custom work plan views that are filtered to show a single resource or a set of resources using data views. So let me hop over to show you what that looks like. If I go to reports and data, this is going to be very quick, but we can dive into this more if people want to. Under reports and data, if you go to data views and you select a data view, I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom. You'll see there's an action and activity work plan, or if you're using the old terminology, it would say strategy and activity work plan. If I pull that up and expand to full screen, what you'll see here, this is a default table or grid spreadsheet of all of the strategy and activity work plan data in your project right now. So you can see whether you're looking at strategies or actions or activities, monitoring or tasks. You can see it includes all types of actions, gives you some basic information, including which results chain it's associated with. And then it goes through, and this includes all of the assignments and expenses in your project. And it includes all of your resources, the work unit dates, the work units and work unit, work date unit, work date, work units, etc. It also includes the information about the work unit rates, if you've set those in desktop. And it also calculates for you that work unit expense. So it's multiplying 5 work units by 150 work unit rates, and it gives you that expense. So I was saying that although we don't show the budget information or the cost for assignments in the work plan viewer, you can see that information here in these work plan tables if you've already defined it in desktop. So if there's expenses, there'll also be expenses in here. So you can see I've just sorted it to show expenses. So you have all of your work plan data here in this action and activity work plan data view, you can then come in and fully customize it and save it as a custom viewer. So let me just show you one way to customize it. I'm going to filter this to show only the RAD elimination results chain that we were just working with. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to filter it to only show Elena Martin's assignments. So I've just filtered it. So now this entire table only shows Elena Martin's assignments. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to group this by action, group by action name. So now I've created, can I collapse? Yeah, collapse all rows. So now I've created a work plan view here. I'm also going to pin this to the left. I've created a data view that shows for each strategy or action here within the results chain that I've set, which is RAD elimination. It shows the activities and the tasks and the strategies that are assigned only to Elena. So we can now see all of Elena's assignments. We can see all of the cost or the expense associated with Elena's assignments. These tables don't roll up the values for you. You'd have to do that. But I've created this custom view. I can now come in and I can save it. And I'm going to call it Elena's work assignments for RC1 RAT elimination. So I've created a custom work plan view. I've hit save. Now I have access to that. Anytime I come back to the data views, I can either pull up the standard view or I can go straight to Elena's work assignments. And this will pull in all of the latest data that you have edited in those work plan viewers. Again, you can also export this to Excel if you need to. So even though those work plan views here don't yet support sort of sorting and filtering by your resource or your people, again, you can do that in data views. So you can generate those resource specific work plan views. So let me quickly come over just before we're at the end here. I want to let you know what we're planning on doing for work plan phase 2. And again, if anyone is excited about this, we're looking for funding to make this happen. So reach out to us. Any little bit helps. So we want to support the remaining data from Miradi Desktop, as Sarah asked. We want to bring all these data fields into Miradi Share so you can fully manage them in Miradi Share. That will then allow us to create some more sophisticated budget viewers for you. In addition to the data views I just showed you, we've definitely had requests for different types of budget viewers. So in addition to the work plan view editor, we want to create budget viewers that allow you to bring your assignments and your expenses together into single budget views for different timeframes, similar to the work plan viewer. We also want to develop expanded sort, filter, and search functionality in the work plan viewer, and we'll be looking for user feedback and what would be most useful. We've had a request for expanded Excel export options, so you can sort of customize your Excel exports to help you work in other systems or meet your work planning needs that happen outside of Miradi. And finally, we'll want to create a Write API, as I mentioned, that would allow you to edit content outside of Miradi Share and dynamically sync it back to your Miradi project. Last thing, just want to point you to the support resources that are available. So in the upper left under support, you can always go to our help center and just type in work planning. But linked here in many of the pages in the work plan section, if you click on learn more about managing work planning and data in Miradi Share, you'll get to a lengthy article that you can scroll through or tab through to look at different items here. And some of these have links to YouTube videos and detailed information. So if you have questions about work planning, check out the Help Center article. And then you can always post comments at the end of the article here. And because if we haven't covered something you're curious about, just post a comment and we can develop more help resources. So any final questions or comments, thoughts? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What you'd like to see next.
Lots of
Miradi
questions in
team,
the chat.
FOS team.
Looks like Sarah has her hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to build on what you said, Carrie, about the help center to
Yeah.
mention that if you do have any questions, remember that if you post them as comments in the help center, then that answer will also help others in the community.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't necessarily do if you send in a support request. So that is very welcome if you use that more.
Fabulous reminder.
There was a question, Carrie, that just came through about costs. So I don't know if you just want to point people to where they can find that information.
Yeah, thanks for I was scrolling by very quickly. So the cost is under pricing. So the pro plan for a year, which gives you individual access to create as many Miradi projects as you want in the standalone space and then share it with others for viewing, or other pro users could also edit the content. That's $350 a year, and we do have reduced pricing available. So if you submit a support request, we're happy to work with you to figure out a pricing option that works for you. So if you wanted to get a pro plan and create and edit your own Miradi projects, you would not at this point have access to these expanded work planning features. You could do basic work planning. You could also do work planning in desktop, but the work plan viewer is not available yet in standalone projects. So if you wanted full access to all the features we covered today, you could get a team plan, and team plans are actually priced by project. So if you have 2 or more people working on a project, it becomes more cost effective to get a team plan. So we're hoping to encourage people to work as teams. So if you want to work on one project that you share with a team, then all of your team members can have access to that for $500 a year. Or again, we have reduced pricing if you need a reduced price, so contact us. Or as you can see there, the pricing that's available. Again, this covers all of your users in Miradi, whether they're editors or viewers. It's just priced by project. So it depends on how many Miradi projects you're using. So hopefully that's helpful, and do reach out to us if you want to talk about setting up even a trial subscription for your organization or your team.